it has been confirmed by one of his supposed friends. I'm saying that because I don't know. One of his friends has done a video claiming to be sharing a letter that he wrote, and there's been audio that has come through from the police department, the Boulder Police Department, and there is a part of me that the minute I heard the news, it fell off. You know when you hear really terrible news and your body either accepts it or it doesn't, that intuition? I was shocked when I read it, and I immediately rejected it. It made no sense. The reason why it made no sense, and a lot of you will agree with me, is the amount of time that we have spent listening to what David has to say. Now, I'm not trying to take away from the fact that we're human, and that things get difficult, and it certainly got difficult for David. I'm only saying this, I'm not his friend, I'm not his family member, I'm not a close association, but when you share so much online, when you do videos, when people are watching you so frequently, when people are involved in what you're saying over extended periods of time and over years, you start to become a sort of surrogate family. You start to become, in a very odd way, connected in a way, you know. And I've done videos for a long time, and I understand that. And so I've watched David's videos for a very, very long time, and he understood and he shared his beliefs on taking a personal way out. And I don't ever criticise it. I think in any sense that you're still going to be loved if that's the case. He shared his beliefs. In 2022, he shared publicly that he was not in that mind state. Now that was, 4 years ago, you know, and things can change. And I know he was, you know, from what I've heard from what he said, he had a lot of health concerns, he was under a lot of pressure, but still, in the last live that I saw David share, he talked about being excited for disclosure and seeing us next week on Sunday, and then out of nowhere, this happens. Now, I want to be sensitive, this is why I did that disclaimer in the beginning, that absolutely, we can get to the point where we've had enough. You know, would anybody blame anybody in the state of our world and the things that we have to deal with? But there is still just a part of it that feels wrong. Now, I might be really silly here, and there is an effort here for him to exit the public eye so he can recuperate and recover and continue what he has been doing and what he potentially will do in the future. That's what I feel. If he has passed...
Just reading some of the comments under one of David Wilcock's podcasts. This one is The Divine Cosmos, 3 years ago. The Archangel Michael Valiant Thor Connection Cinematic Re-Upload Part 1. And we're reading down in the comments. So someone commented at Great Broad. I was born into a very violent, dysfunctional family in 1956. My authority figures were a disappointment and at times out of control of their rage. In an instant, somehow I managed to get protection and help my intuition. And when I was 20 years old, I was healed completely from a chronic problem with my kidneys. Kept getting infected from a clog going towards the bladder. The operation would have gutted me like a fish, and I was so afraid. So I asked God to either take the problem away from me or to please take me home to Him, because I wasn't about to have this procedure. This was almost 50 years ago, and I never had another issue since then. And I also bore 2 healthy babies. This stuff is true and real. At Lewis Wickham 9151 says, okay, I just had to pause this and say this, and I really hope you read this, David. Stop apologizing for how long your videos are and how much you talk, because I and many others want as much information and wisdom from you for free that we can get. So please do me a favor and talk for 5 hours and share everything you know and never apologize for it being long. I will watch it for 3, 5, 8 hours, no problem. We are timeless. Don't forget it. David, I've followed your work for years. You have always been true and genuine, you sweet soul. How could somebody be bad to you? You're such a lovely person, so open and helpful to others. God bless you, David, and I pray that you and all the protection you need for your work and your life. David's back, 90s hip-hop intros and wild hair. Was just surprised with the badass changes. In all seriousness, thanks for decades of research and your wisdom's teaching show. Many people I know are growing more gardens than ever this year. I can't believe I missed this one. Happy to find this. Good morning, David. Thanks for teaching. Beloved David, so good to see you. I'm so sad to hear about your divorce. I have so much respect, love, and gratitude for your service. Thank you. The Gates impression is hilarious. You watch the one with, what is it? Danny and Brinkley on the Tibetan rainbow body. Yeah, this one with the one with Graham Hancock from 8 years ago. Now, was that around the time Graham Hancock was also on Joe Rogan at that time? Yes, that was 8 years ago. Yeah, he's been on a few times. 10 years ago, year ago, 2 years ago, 12 years ago, 9 years ago. So that's probably the one you're referring to. Joe Rogan Experience number 872, Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson. I think he still does lives, yeah. I think I saw one recently. Oh, 8 years ago. Yeah, that one, yeah, remember that one, number 961, that one's the one with Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, and Michael Shermer. Yeah, we listened to Michael Shermer on a few other things as well. So that's probably the one you're referring to, 8 years ago right there when Michael Shermer was on. Graham Hancock was also on David Wilcock, with David Wilcock, yeah. That's posted on his channel, you can see it. Yeah, interesting. The one with Bocock and Hancock is about a half hour. 32 minutes.
I'm David Wilcock, and I welcome you to Disclosure. This is our opportunity to have a fireside chat about some of the most fascinating information ever put forward by anyone who has been writing books and doing research. What we have here is a 14-episode miniseries on ancient history.
Yeah.
If you think that you know all there is to know about ancient history, you may be very surprised. Never before have we had such... really like cataclysms very much. And they don't, in my view, take enough account of the role of cataclysmic events in the story of human civilization. And again, there's new information and new evidence here. We now know it's really no longer in dispute that the Earth was hit by a fragmenting comet round about 12,980 years ago, give or take 5 years. You can bring the resolution down that tight to a very exact date from the Greenland ice cores, because when comets hit the Earth, they leave a signature in the chemistry of the Earth all over the planet. Nanodiamonds and iridium and platinum. There are remnants, and these have been preserved in the Greenland ice cores, and we can say for sure this event happened 12,980 years ago, give or take 5 years. And it initiated an episode that geologists have been aware of for a very long time, which they call the Younger Dryas. You see, 12,980 years ago, the Earth was coming out of the Ice Age. The Ice Age reached its maximum extent 21,300 years ago, approximately, and there began a gradual meltdown. Not always gradual, there were some episodes of rapid flooding during that story, but it was a process of warming. And then suddenly, 12,980 years ago, for reasons that until recently it's not been possible to explain, the Earth was plunged back into a dramatic refreeze.
Hi, my name is Charles Moita. I'm a nurse supervisor at Campus Health Clinic. Campus is a great company. I have worked for them now for 10 years.
Went back to colder than it had been at the coldest point of the Ice Age. And that's the episode that they call the Younger Dryas, and it lasts from 12,980 years ago, give or take 5 years, down to 11,600 years ago, when suddenly the cold lifts and the Earth resumes its warming process. So you have roughly 1,600, 1,700 years of radical, unexplained deep freeze. We now know why that happened. It happened because of that comet, which fragmented. Its fragments hit many different parts of the Earth, but the greatest impact of all was in North America, and it was on the North American ice cap. That's why there isn't a crater, because the ice cap was best part of 1.5 miles to 2 miles deep. Okay, and that fragmenting comet smacked into the ice cap. The crater was made in ice, not in the body of the Earth, and that's why we don't see the crater today. But what we do see are the chemical signatures of that impact all over the world. So the comet hits. The initial effect is dramatic, large-scale flooding, because the ice cap is suddenly liquidized. There's a huge flooding event results from that, which leaves scars all over the North American landscape. And then enormous quantities of dust are thrown up into the upper atmosphere. These enshroud the Earth completely in a mantle of dust, which stops the sun's rays reaching the Earth. Then we go into the deep freeze, called the Younger Dryas, because the sun's warming effect on the Earth is no longer happening. And it takes 1,600 or so years for that dust mantle to disperse. It's possible that the Earth interacted again with fragments of that comet, and that may be part of why it ends rather suddenly about 11,600 years ago.
What's the data on sea level? What did it do to sea level?
Well, then you have a very rapid episode of sea level rise, exactly following 11,600 years ago. So you have instant flooding, 12,980, sea level goes up, then it goes down again,
because you go into a freeze. Then 11,600 years ago, the Earth is suddenly warming up very rapidly, and sea level rises very rapidly. And it's not an accident that 11,600 years ago is exactly the period that Plato pointed to in the story of Atlantis, because he said that Atlantis was destroyed, submerged by a giant flood and earthquakes 9,000 years before the time of Solon. And 9,000 years, Solon is 600 BC, so that's 9,600 BC. That is 11,600 years ago.
Wow.
That is the end of the Younger Dryas. Now, how could Plato have made that up? You know, it connects perfectly.
To try to say that that isn't a link is a conspiracy theory.
I believe it's a conspiracy theory. To dismiss that, as mainstream academics have done, they've tried every way to make Plato not say there was a cataclysm 11,600 years ago. They even say that he's talking about months instead of years. I mean, this was Plato. When he said years, he meant years.
Yeah.
Solon was his own ancestor. He received this story through Solon. He was reporting what for him was a very strong and definite fact, that there had been an event that had destroyed a great civilization 9,000 years before the time of Solon, and in our time frame, that is 11,600 years before our time. You know, it just all adds up. So I think it's going to become more and more difficult for mainstream archaeology to dismiss this as we start seeing new evidence emerging all over the world. First of all, we now have a smoking gun. We didn't have that before. Yes, we all understood that the end of the Ice Age was cataclysmic, but we didn't have an actual very specific smoking gun. See, when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, I focused very much on the window between 12,000 and 13,000 years ago. And the moment that the comet hits the Earth, which we now know, but I did not know when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, is 12,980 years ago. Okay, that is exactly in that window.
Expect something from a politician you've never met. You can't put any faith in a politician you've never met. You can't have a sense of, ownership over a government or a politician in the sense that, you demand accountability from them. Very strange. Our society has grown too eager to hasten and is often gleeful at the demise of its enemies. The vanquishing of an opponent is a moment to pause, not rejoice.
From bear to brow task, passed. With faux brow.
The atomic age is ending and a new era of deterrence built on AI is set to begin. No other country in the history of the world
Here for $5 a week with $5 copay.
The United States is far from perfect, but it is easy to forget how much opportunity exists in the country for those who are not hereditary elites than in any other nation on this planet. Right, but also every year there seems to be less and less and less and less opportunity.